Streaming live, this is Tracking the Tropics.
We are monitoring 3 tropical systems less than a week after the long-awaited farewell of Hurricane Dorian, and these 3 systems organizing right on cue during the peak of hurricane season. The Tracking the Tropics team is live with what you need to know about these 3 waves as we track them in the days and weeks to come. Hey there, everybody. WFLA digital anchor JV Buno, and don't call it a comeback, as LL Cool J once said. We are back here on Tracking the Tropics with WKRT Chief Meteorologist Ed Bloodsworth joining us from Mobile, Alabama. But as always, we want to begin with Storm Team 8 meteorologist Amanda Holly standing by with the latest on these 3 systems. Amanda, say it ain't so. We just finished with Dorian, and now we're talking about these 3 waves.
Yeah, you know, we are. We're tracking 3 different waves that each have a chance of developing, some better than others, and they are scattered out about across the Atlantic right now. They're waves that come off the coast of Africa and make their way closer to the United States, and this is exactly what we would expect to see this time of year. The first tropical wave close to home at this point, we call it Invest 95L. It is showers and thunderstorms right now over the Bahamas, but the good news, it's not over the Bahamas that were impacted last week by Dorian. It's actually still a little farther away from that. However, this area of showers and thunderstorms has a pretty good chance of developing, especially as we get towards the weekend and into the beginning of next week. And as Ed will talk about in just a few minutes, this is going to head for his neck of the woods. But right now, it is going to continue to move to the northwest, potentially moving into the Florida Straits, and it will be moving into a more favorable environment for development there. So we're going to have to watch this one a little bit, especially as it makes its way into the Gulf of Mexico. That is the near term. That would be this weekend and into early next week. The second area that we're watching, this one's called Invest 94L, and it's also just a disorganized area of showers and thunderstorms right now that is east of the Lesser Antilles, sort of where Dorian actually first began as a system there. But this one actually only has about a 10% chance of developing over the next 5 days. Not in a great environment right now for development. Not really worried about this one at the moment. It is going to continue to slide east, and no significant development is expected even after the weekend. The third wave that we're watching, though, just came off the coast of Africa here, and it's really not even a whole lot of showers and thunderstorms at the moment. You can see there's a few clouds, maybe a burst of showers and thunderstorms right there south of the Cabo Verde Islands. Otherwise, this one has only about a 20% chance of developing heading into the weekend. But after that, that's when we're going to have to watch this particular wave. It is going to, again, make that trek across the Atlantic. It's got a long ways to go, but as it makes its way towards the Lesser Antilles, towards the Caribbean, then it has a little bit better chance of developing. Models do develop this one. We are going to watch this one heading into, again, next week, the middle and end of next week. That's when we're going to keep a better eye on this one. For now, doesn't really have a great chance of developing, but something to watch in the coming days. But again, no surprise here. Yesterday was the climatological peak of hurricane season. That's when we typically see the most activity out in the Atlantic, and we're seeing a lot of potential development right now, but no current named storms. But we've still got a long ways of hurricane season to go yet. One thing I want to mention here, this is the sea surface temperature anomaly map. So if it is warmer than average or cooler than average, that's what you're looking at here. But check out the Bahamas. I put the track of Dorian on here. That's this black line. And you can see as Dorian emerged just north of the Caribbean islands and stalled over the Bahamas, we're now looking at quite a large area of temperatures, sea surface temperatures, that are below average. And these areas actually dropped between 1 and 5 degrees Celsius. And what does all that mean for you? That actually just means if something were to move into this area, it might actually hinder development just a little bit, because before Dorian, these waters were really warm. Remember, we were talking about 86, 87 degrees. We're not talking about that warm fuel anymore. So if a wave moves into this area or a named storm moves into this area, it might be hindered by that just a little bit. And the last thing I wanted to get to here is the hurricane names, right? We've been focused on Dorian so much. That was the D name. But while Dorian was going on, we actually went through Aaron, Fernand, and Gabrielle. Now, the next named storm, when it develops, will be Umberto, and that is what we could be looking at with one of those 3 waves out there that are currently have a chance of developing, but nothing named in the Atlantic right now. So that's kind of the latest, JB. I'll send it back to you and Ed so that you guys can talk a little bit more about what we can potentially expect this weekend.
All right. Thanks, Amanda. Hey, I want to give some shout outs to many of you who are joining us here live on Track in the Tropics. People like Winnie Tucker, Kristen Bonacorsi, Frida Hutchinson, Carol Crowley, James Labello, Kayla Renee, a lot of you joining, and we're going to be reading through many of your comments here and the moments to come here on Track in the Tropics. But I want to bring in our featured meteorologist today, joining us from WKRG News 5 in Mobile, Alabama. He's a familiar face, everybody. Former WFLA Storm Team 8 meteorologist Ed Bloodsworth, again, joining us from the sunny Gulf Coast up there in Alabama. And yeah, we miss him quite a bit because he used to be with us here at WFLA. Hey there, Ed. Let's talk a little bit about this. We're talking specifically about, Invest 95L there, and we see that cone a little bit, that track maybe taking it a little bit into the Gulf of Mexico. What does this mean for us going forward? And really, what does this mean for your region of the Gulf Coast, including the Florida Panhandle?
Yeah, well, as Amanda just mentioned here, it's not unusual this time of year to see not one but multiple systems developing in the Atlantic Basin, as we're one day past, but it's just the statistical peak of the season here. But in regards to Invest 95, again, we've been watching that here for the last couple of days. Looked just to be an open wave, but now sitting over the Turks and Caicos. As Amanda mentioned, over the next 2 days, we're likely not going to see too much development, but it's once that system starts to move towards the Florida Straits and then long-term into the Gulf of Mexico. As Amanda was just pointing out, that sea surface temperature anomaly graphic was very telling. You saw that very cold pool left after Dorian. But if you were to look in the Gulf of Mexico, temperatures are running well above average there, Amanda, as you just saw. So that's going to be the concern. I was looking at some of the earlier model runs. Some develop this more than others, but for us, the one thing that we're going to likely see out of this, regardless of what this becomes, is going to be a rainmaker, likely into the weekend and early next week from the Gulf Coast, which is something we actually need here. We've been haven't seen too much rain as of late, and the lawns are getting a little bit crunchy out there along the northern Gulf Coast here. So we actually need this rain. But Amanda, as you were saying, you were looking at some of the models this morning, and some develop this more than others.
Right, that's exactly right. I don't think anything in the near term, but like you say, the biggest impacts regardless is going to be in the form of a lot of rain, especially starting with the state of Florida, the peninsula of Florida there, and then moving into your neck of the woods, potentially somewhere along, the Gulf Coast states. And some bring it into the panhandle of Florida, some bring it in a little farther to the west, and that's just something we're going to have to continue to look at over the next couple of days. But that's going to be in the time frame of this weekend into early next week. And I think most models at this point do keep it weak, but as we've seen in the past, as anything that moves into the Gulf of Mexico, that is some high octane fuel. Those water temperatures very, very warm at this point.
And guys, this is this is normal for this time of year, right? I mean, we're monitoring multiple systems. I mean, September, this is prime time for hurricane season. So we're post-Dorian here, but this is pretty normal, right, Ed?
Yeah, and as we've been sort of mentioning with Dorian, of course, with that being such a historic storm here, I think some kind of fear that we all, as meteorologists, get or start to feel is after a major storm like that there's sort of a lull in awareness after something that catastrophic hits, especially in the Bahamas, as we're getting more pictures every day out of the northern Bahamas and the Abaco and Grand Bahama, and the images are just terrible. But again, it's the time where we tend to get multiple systems, as we've been seeing. You're seeing with these little areas of invest, and these are all waves that initially generate off of the African continent and then start progressing off to the west. And this is quite common for this time of year. And again, still some decent water temperatures in the Atlantic, but again, near the Bahamas, things are a little bit cool. But the Gulf, you go back, the last system of significance that we had in the Gulf of Mexico this season was Hurricane Barry, which did eventually come on shore into Louisiana. So this is just a good rule of thumb here. At this time of year, even as we head into October, you really can't let your guard down. Things really start taking a pretty sharp decline once we hit November. But as Amanda can certainly allude to, talking about the Gulf of Mexico, I mean, I know you guys in Tampa have been seeing some pretty wet weather over the last couple of months, no doubt about that here. So more rain, just adding on to, for you guys, Amanda, what's been a very wet season so far.
It's weird to hear Ed say you guys in Tampa. Yeah. Just for the record, I want to let it be known that's a little strange to hear. Of course, Ed was here for many years, even preceding Amanda and myself. But yes, Amanda, you want to pick that up?
Yeah, we've seen a lot of rain this year in the peninsula of Florida, and we really don't don't need a whole lot more, but we could be looking at maybe 2 to 4 inches in the peninsula this weekend. But check out we were talking about the sea surface temperatures. That's on your map right now. And I pointed out the cooler areas than normal. But like Ed was saying, the water temperatures of the Gulf of Mexico, very warm. You can see on the west coast of Florida there, those bright red colors, that's well above average. I looked at the water temperature this morning off of Clearwater Beach, 89 degrees. So plenty of warm fuel, plenty of fuel for those systems that move into the Gulf of Mexico, that happen to move into the Gulf of Mexico. All else being, favorable for development, Ed, that is something that is going to progress the strengthening of a system.
Reading through some of the comments. I'll give you just a second here, just 1 second here, Ed. Just reading through some of the comments real quick, because we're getting so many people like Ariana Higgins saying you're the best, Amanda Holly. People saying hello to Ed Bloodsworth, Laura Dawson, Daniel Anai, if I'm pronouncing that correctly. We have a lot of commenters joining us. Sharon James, Jeremy White, many others here on Tracking the Tropics. We really appreciate it. Ed, I'll let you finish up your thought there. And also, Marianne Fernandez wants to know, guys, in the comment section. She says, please say the Bahamas will not get hit again. But we were talking about this a little bit off stream, Amanda. Ed, the Bahamas could be seeing some impacts here in the days to come.
Yeah, I was noting yesterday when the Hurricane Center started their discussion on this area, they were noting that there were some squally weather, mainly in the southern Bahamas, where they had some gusts that were approaching tropical storm force strength, and just some of the outer squalls of this. Again, nothing really too organized right now, but again, as unfortunately, this is going to start spreading rain through the central Bahamas, the northern Bahamas. Yeah, they'll probably get a little bit of rain. I don't think they'll see anything, too heavy, but at this point, they don't need anything else. But as Amanda mentioned, you see that tropical moisture graphic, just this giant plume of tropical moisture over the peninsula of Florida. That's as we head into the weekend. And it looks like, I was looking at this yesterday, some of that moisture starts to spread towards the Gulf Coast by late Saturday, and then especially by Sunday and Monday for the Florida Panhandle, Alabama, Mississippi. That area will see some of the higher rain chances now Sunday and into Monday. At the very least, whatever this actually turns into, it's going to at the very least enhance our daily pattern, where we'll start to see a better coverage, at least afternoon thunderstorms, which again, we'll certainly take. I mean, we've been seeing temperatures running around 95, 97, 99 here the last couple of days. So we'll take a little bit of wet weather to cool the temperature down. And again, rain is not necessarily a bad thing for our area with this system. So, but again, as Amanda kept mentioning, the Gulf of Mexico historically, storms that have moved or anything that's moved into the Gulf, models are notoriously kind of bad at predicting intensity forecasting right now. They're improving, but there's still a lot left to be desired. So, Amanda, you and I kind of share the same concern. What exactly happens with this once it moves into the Gulf?
It's just going to be based off all the other factors, the amount of wind shear that is there and how much moisture. Obviously, moisture is moving in. We have those warm sea surface temperatures. So is the shear going to be low enough for this thing to really get organized before moving onto those Gulf Coast states?
We have a lot of commenters here. Trudy says, good luck, Ed, in Mobile. We will miss you. So a shout out from Trudy. We have a couple others here, like Mallory Motter saying, hi, JB, Ed, and Amanda. Hello to everybody joining us here on Facebook through Tracking the Tropics. We appreciate you being with us here this Wednesday, again, after we did 12 straight days of hurricane coverage for Hurricane Dorian. We are back here now on Tracking the Tropics with our regularly scheduled episode, Wednesdays, 1:30 Eastern, 12:30 Central. I want to get to a point that Amanda was just talking about, because WFLA top Facebook fan Ryan Prescott is asking about its chances of developing into a hurricane. Maybe you can chime in here a little bit, Amanda, about Ryan's question.
Yeah, and just going off of what Ed was just talking about, the intensity forecast, very hard to predict at this point, but most models that I was looking at earlier, at least bring it to a tropical storm. So something that we're going to have to watch going forward. But usually we talk about, preparing for at least a category above or a category below that. So, it is definitely not out of the question.
Ed, there's been a lot of news coverage regarding Alabama, as far as, the White House and what has transpired with President Trump, and saying that Alabama might have been hit by Dorian, or what the early forecast showed when we were monitoring Hurricane Dorian. But there is actually now a chance that Invest 95L actually really does hit Alabama. And I know that it's something that you're not just monitoring there on the Gulf Coast, but I know that Central Alabama is probably keeping an eye on this as well.
Yes, certainly, because wherever this comes ashore, again, we just want to completely reiterate here, it's not 100% that this thing is actually going to form into a named system. Right now, the Hurricane Center has it at a 60% chance of developing into a depression over the next 5 days, and we'll see if they start to up that chance based off of the latest computer models that come in. But regardless, anywhere along the Gulf Coast, Florida Panhandle, even into southern Georgia, Alabama, central Alabama, over towards Mississippi, really the entire northern Gulf Coast needs to just pay attention to this. At this point, we're not too concerned with a significant major storm coming in, at least just with the current model forecast. But again, we just want to make sure we'll keep up to date with local media and local newscasts over the next couple of days. But this time, certainly, the folks in Alabama need to pay attention with this, because at the very least, there is going to be some significant rainfall coming in into early next week. And that's something we always want to press with these tropical systems. It's not the wind that causes major threat to life. It's water. It's storm surge and then inland flooding after storms make landfall. Even with a tropical storm, I mean, you go back to Allison back in the early 2000s, which made landfall in Texas, was just a tropical storm, but that produced over 2 feet of rain in many spots. Not to say that's going to happen with this, but as Amanda mentioned, 2 to 4 inches over the peninsula. We could foreseeably, depending on where this forms and how organized it gets, could see a little bit more than that over the Gulf Coast. Model's still kind of up in the air with that, but again, hopefully that's going to come into some clarity over the next 24 to 48 hours.
Amanda, maybe you can explain what we're looking at here as far as this graphic. When you say 2-day development, 5-day development, what does the word development actually mean? Do we mean developing into a tropical storm or beyond? What is that? Maybe you could talk about the terminology here with this graphic.
We have to start. Sometimes we start with a tropical depression, but something more organized than just a tropical wave, the disorganized area of showers and thunderstorms. So in 2 days' time, it has only a 20% chance of developing. It doesn't have a very favorable environment right now to get more organized. But heading into the next 5 days, so like Ed was talking about, into the beginning of next week, it has a better chance of becoming organized. It has a better chance of that low pressure, the center of low pressure, becoming a little stronger, and again, starting to see that circulation, and then potentially being a named storm.
Interesting. We have a lot of people asking about the wave that is off the Africa coast there, Amanda. I don't know if maybe we can transition to that real quick, but Josie wants to know, when you're talking about the wave coming off of Africa, do you mean an actual wave, a heat wave? What does that necessarily mean when we're talking about a tropical wave here?
It's funny. My mom asked me that this morning, and it's a good question. Not everybody understands what a tropical wave means. Right now we see these waves come off the coast of Africa, and every couple of days, every 3 to 4 to 5 days, and it's just an area of moisture that kind of moves out over the Atlantic, and it's usually over top of it. Over top of the showers and thunderstorms, it's usually a cooler area, cool air mass, and those showers and thunderstorms have a good environment to continue to bubble up. But once that dry air above the storm kind of moves out and the storm gets a little more organized, that's when we're starting to talk about the storm becoming a tropical depression and then continuing to further organize. So it's a tropical wave really is just an area of showers and thunderstorms that are not necessarily organized just yet. And we see those waves come off the coast of Africa every 3 to 5 days. That's really, you can call it a disturbance, a system, but it's just not a tropical cyclone yet.
Yeah, and for those viewers who are really want to get a little bit into the weeds with this, that entire area, if you'll notice there, that belt of thunderstorms, we call that the Intertropical Convergence zone, and that's where the trade winds from the northern and southern hemisphere come together, and it produces a lot of lift in there. So if you look at a picture of the globe, you'll kind of see a broken area of thunderstorms that encircle the globe. Well, during the summer months, that what we call the ITCZ for short actually starts going a little bit farther north in latitude, and we start to see that interact with the warmer waters of the Atlantic. So that's why we always watch these clusters of thunderstorms, basically just areas of low pressure. And once they start moving into favorable environments over that kind of very warm water, that's again the fuel for these systems to start taking on tropical characteristics. So again, as we've been sort of pressing, this is kind of common to see these storms going or moving off the coast of Africa. Nothing too unusual here with this pattern that we're in. But again, we'll monitor over the next couple of days. New waves will come off of Africa. Some will curve out to sea. Some will continue on a more westward track. But that is certainly something that we'll bear watching, JB, over the next couple of days, more presently with obviously Invest 95.
Everybody, if you want Amanda Holly's Wave Watch, it's for you on WFLA.com and the WFLA News Channel 8 app. We just flashed it on screen there as we were cycling through our graphics here, everybody. But that's going to wrap for us here as far as this latest edition of Tracking the Tropics. Again, as a reminder to all of our viewers out there, how this works is we are live every Wednesday at 1:30 Eastern, 12:30 Central, on this website, this app, or this social media platform, wherever you're joining us. We stream to a lot of different places across the southeastern United States. And then during hurricane season, when we actually have a named storm that we are following with great focus, we'll be streaming more often. So we'll be streaming usually every day, and we'll be streaming to more sections of the country as Tracking the Tropics becomes more center stage for all of our viewers out there joining us from really around the world. And we've had viewers joining us from Europe, from Australia, Asia. We've had viewers from so many different corners of the globe. And we really hope that you enjoy our coverage here on Track of the Tropics. So we will be back on Wednesday at 1:30 Eastern, 12:30 Central, unless we have, maybe, guys, fingers crossed, right? Fingers crossed that we don't have more significant development, but we will be monitoring this, of course. Yes, Ed, monitoring it every hour of every day between now and our next episode. Everybody, for Storm Team 8 Meteorologist Amanda Holly, WKRG News 5, Chief Meteorologist Ed Bloodsworth, I'm JB Buno. Thanks for joining us on this edition of Track of the Tropics. We will see you soon next time here when we stream on this app, this website, or this social media platform. Take care, everybody. Farewell.
Thank you for watching Tracking the Tropics.